The fridge was humming too loud. That was the first thing I noticed. The second? The crooked painting in the hallway, the one Maeve always straightened when she walked by. It was tilting to the left, like the house itself had sighed. I dropped my bag by the door. My shoes felt heavy on the hardwood, and there was this strange echo in the air, a hollow stillness. Like the walls knew before I did. Something was gone. I moved slowly, not out of fear, but out of confusion. The living room looked fine at first glance. The couch was there, the coffee table, the half-finished puzzle she said she'd get to eventually. But then, small details screamed. The candle that always smelled like sea salt? Gone. Her mug, the yellow one with the chip on the rim? Not in the sink. Not on the counter. Then I stepped into the bedroom, and I stopped breathing. Her closet side was empty, hangers swinging like they'd just been stripped. Her vanity mirror had smudges, as if someone had wiped it clean in a hurry. The drawers, open and hollow, like mouths gasping. And on the pillow she used to sleep on, a folded note? No, just my phone. Buzzing. One message. 6 words. I'm moving in with someone more successful. That's it. No punctuation. No name. No goodbye. No apology. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I didn't throw things like they do in movies. I just sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence. And then, like a machine, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and called Dennis, my lawyer. Told him she was gone. Told him she left a note, or rather, a digital grenade. Told him I didn't want to chase her, just protect what was left. He said, don't reply to anything. Let her figure it out on her own. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the staircase with the hallway light off, staring at the front door like it might explain something. Maybe she'd walk back through it. Maybe she never existed to begin with. The house creaked all around me, like it was morning too. But exactly 48 hours later, something shifted. It began with 1 call, then 3, then 13. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree, messages from Maeve, her sister, even some unknown number that just said, we need to talk. It's urgent. I didn't answer, but I read one voicemail transcript. I didn't know. I didn't realize everything I left behind. Please call me back. No, I wouldn't. Not yet. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that she hadn't just left clothes and books behind. She left evidence. And what I found tucked behind the dresser would unravel more than her betrayal. It would flip everything I thought I knew about our marriage upside down. I didn't go looking for anything. I wasn't in some cinematic rage, tearing apart drawers or slamming open closets. I was just tired. Bone-deep tired. I had spent the night hunched over at the top of the stairs, blinking at the wall, trying to recall the last thing Maeve said to me before I left. I couldn't. That realization hit harder than the text. Not only had she vanished, she had already been gone, long before I saw the empty closet. Around 5 in the morning, I got up and started collecting random things she forgot. Not out of spite. Out of routine. A stray sock behind the laundry basket. A necklace tangled around the shower knob. Then, when I moved the dresser slightly to retrieve what looked like a fallen earring, I saw it. A small velvet pouch. It was tucked behind the leg of the dresser, wedged so tightly it looked like it had been shoved there, not dropped. Inside, I found a flash drive. No label. No case. Just metal and plastic and dust. My hands were cold as I plugged it into the laptop. At first, I saw folders with meaningless names. Random numbers. 2-letter codes. But then I opened one called Rook. Videos. Dozens. Maybe more. I clicked on the first one. The screen flickered, and there she was. Maeve. Laughing. Sitting at a table, sipping wine in a restaurant I didn't recognize. Across from her sat a man. Tall. Clean-cut. Wearing a black suit and a smug smirk that made my stomach churn. It wasn't just the fact that she was with another man. It was the way she looked at him. Like I never existed. I skipped ahead in the video. Same table. Now she was leaning forward, holding his hand. Whispering something with that sly little smirk she used to give me when we shared secrets in public. My heart dropped further with each clip. Different nights. Different outfits. Same man. Same look. The last video was in our house. Our living room. While I was at a trade expo in Chicago last month, I could hear my dog barking in the background, the one she claimed made too much noise to keep anymore. She had him in our home. On our couch. The same couch where we once cuddled through storms. Where she told me she wanted 3 kids, where she cried when her father died and I held her for hours. Now, she was giggling in that same spot with another man's arm around her. I shut the laptop. I didn't scream. I didn't punch a wall. I just sat in silence for a long time, feeling like I'd been erased, not betrayed, but replaced, long before she sent that message. Around 9 a.m., my phone started vibrating again. Maeve. Again. Then a message from her sister. You need to talk to her. She made a huge mistake. A mistake? No. A mistake is forgetting your anniversary. Leaving your keys in the car. This was a strategy. The folder was called Rook, like chess. Like I was the pawn, and she was moving pieces while I was cluelessly building our life together. But something told me she didn't know that flash drive was missing. Something told me she thought she had covered everything. So I sent one text. Not to her. To him. His number was in one of the videos, briefly flashed on her screen when she checked a message. I paused the clip, zoomed in, and jotted it down. Took me 3 tries, but when he picked up, his voice was like syrup, smug, overconfident. This Elwood, he said, like he already knew who I was. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just said, you left something behind. And then I hung up. I don't know what rattled him more, the call itself, or the silence that followed. But within an hour, I had a knock at my door. Not Maeve. Not her affair partner. Someone else. And what they told me. It changed everything. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was something darker. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't even sure I could hold a conversation with anyone. I'd been running on 3 hours of sleep, microwaved instant coffee, and the raw adrenaline of betrayal. When the knock came, hard, deliberate, like the fist behind it had something to prove, I assumed it was him. The man from the videos. The one who sat on my couch, drinking from my glass, touching my wife like I was just a ghost. But it wasn't him. The man standing on my porch wore a navy blue utility jacket. Not a suit. Not leather shoes. Work boots. A wiry build, maybe mid-50s. Thin gray beard. Eyes sharp enough to cut glass. You're Elwood, right? He asked. I hesitated. Who are you? He didn't answer right away. Just looked over his shoulder like he wasn't sure if someone had followed him. Then he held up a small envelope, sealed and slightly bent. I was told to bring this to you. I wasn't supposed to talk, but I think you deserve more than silence. I stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. By who? I asked, finally. He let out a breath. Let's just say, someone who's not as loyal to the man your wife left with as he thinks. That guy? He's not who he pretends to be. He handed me the envelope and turned to leave. Just like that. Wait, I said, but he was already at the sidewalk. What am I supposed to do with this? He didn't even turn around. Depends how deep you want to dig, Elwood. Just know, this didn't start with your wife. And it sure as hell doesn't end with her either. I stood frozen at the door, fingers gripping the envelope so tightly the edges curled. Inside was a USB drive, this one newer, labeled in blue marker, Cascade 17. I ran inside, slammed the door, and locked it out of instinct. My heart was pounding like a war drum in my chest. I plugged it into the same laptop I had used 2 nights before and opened the only folder it contained. It wasn't videos this time. It was documents. Financial spreadsheets. Bank statements. Travel logs. All of them under the name of another man, not the one I saw with Maeve, but someone connected to him. I recognized one name immediately, Robert Keene. Maeve had mentioned him once, in passing, as someone she knew from work events. I thought nothing of it at the time. But this file? It showed Maeve had transferred nearly $28,000 into a shared account with Robert Keene. That account had only 2 deposits from her. The rest of the transactions? Massive withdrawals. Hotel bookings. Wire transfers to companies I'd never heard of. One of them, Cascade Strategic Holdings, was flagged in the drive with red text. Investigation pending internal collusion? I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. This wasn't just an affair. This was a scheme. My wife, Maeve, the same woman who cried over lost earrings and called herself bad with numbers, was funneling money to a shell account under a man I didn't even know she knew well. Why? For who? For what? The phone rang again. Her, of course. I didn't answer. But I finally read her latest message. Please just talk to me. I messed up. You don't understand everything. You need to hear it from me. No, Maeve. I didn't need to hear your version. I needed the truth. And apparently, I was getting it from strangers. Over the next few hours, I pieced together what I could. The USB had a link to a private folder cloud stored, which had even more damning material. Travel logs from her trips when I thought she was visiting her mother. Conversations logged between her and Robert that sounded more like coded instructions than romantic messages. I had no idea how deep she was in, or how long this had been going on. But one thing was clear, this wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't about someone being more successful. This had been engineered. I sat back in the chair, hands trembling, and looked around the quiet house. It no longer felt like mine. It felt like a crime scene. But then the final blow came, a single image buried deep in the files. Maeve, standing in front of a whiteboard filled with charts and arrows, wearing a badge that read, Cascade Internal, Project Athena Financial Disruption Unit. She wasn't just a participant. She was a planner. And I was her dry run. I must have stared at that image for 20 minutes, maybe longer. Maeve, my wife, the same woman who once cried in my arms over losing a promotion, who used to struggle with online banking, who called spreadsheets soul poison, was standing in front of what looked like a strategy boardroom, presenting like she was born for it. Project Athena, Financial Disruption Unit. Her badge was real, not something faked in Photoshop. I zoomed in. It had barcodes, department codes, even a timestamp. 3 months before we met. My breath caught in my throat. That meant everything I knew, or thought I knew, about our relationship was based on a lie before it even began. I wasn't the boring husband she drifted from. I was the target she selected. A low-risk, high-stability, compliant man with no family complications, no big investments, no criminal record. Just clean credit and predictable income. Easy to forecast. Easy to drain slowly. I ran the name Project Athena through some private browser forums. Nothing official came up, but one whistleblower site had mentioned it, buried in a thread about experimental financial infiltrations through personal relationships. I didn't want to believe it. It sounded like some conspiracy theory podcast garbage. But then I found a PDF in the drive titled Persona Integration and Emotional Compliance, Phase 2. I clicked. Page 1. When subject shows early signs of dependency and trust, begin integrating minor financial suggestions disguised as shared goals. New car, joint savings account, family loan offers. Presented as planning for the future. Page 2. Subject's emotional history should be reinforced with narratives of vulnerability and loyalty. Ideal candidates will exhibit rescue behavior. Those with abandonment trauma histories are optimal. My stomach dropped. Maeve had asked me once, early in our relationship, about my childhood. I told her about how my dad left when I was 10, how my mom raised me on her own, how I always promised I'd be someone people could count on. She cried that night, said I was the kindest man she'd ever met, said she felt safe. But now I knew. She hadn't been moved. She'd been taking notes. I felt like throwing the laptop against the wall, but I needed it. I needed all of it. Evidence. Proof. I took photos of every document, saved cloud links onto encrypted backups, even printed copies on my old office printer in the basement. I wasn't just betrayed, I was a research subject. A Phase 2 compliance model, according to one of the notes in the folder. But here's what really shook me. One of the last files wasn't a document or a video. It was a script. A literal, word-for-word dialogue. Titled, Exit Strategy, Controlled Departure Sequence. And it began with, I'm moving in with someone more successful. I hope you understand. That was the exact text Maeve sent me. It wasn't a spontaneous message. It wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a pre-written line from a tested exit strategy designed to elicit confusion and surrender from the target, me. The goal was to keep me quiet, keep me thinking it was about him being better. So I wouldn't ask questions. So I'd just disappear into self-blame. Instead, I called my lawyer and locked down everything. Joint accounts? Frozen. Shared credit lines? Terminated. Access to my retirement funds? Blocked. The house? Transferred into a trust under my name only. She had no idea I had already prepared a contingency plan last year, not for this, but for identity theft. I never thought I'd use it against my own wife. Then, almost on cue, she called again. This time, I answered. Elwood, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't speak. Elwood, please. I know how this looks, but I can explain. You used a script, I said flatly. Silence. You used a script, Maeve. Elwood, it wasn't like that. I found Project Athena, I interrupted. I found the drive. I saw the videos, the files, the targeting reports. I wasn't your partner. I was your assignment. Her breath caught. Wait, someone gave that to you? She asked quickly. Desperately. That tone wasn't sadness. It was panic. You should be asking yourself who you forgot to pay, I said. Then I hung up. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel helpless. But I also knew I wasn't safe anymore. Because the moment I said the words Projectifina out loud, I stepped into something bigger than betrayal. This wasn't just a marriage gone wrong. This was organized manipulation, a machine built on emotional engineering. And I had just pulled a thread that someone didn't want exposed. The next morning started with the sound of my front gate clicking open. I hadn't slept. Not a second. I sat by the window the entire night with the lights off, one hand clutching my old baseball bat and the other gripping my phone like it could save me. I knew this wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This wasn't even about Maeve. She was just a thread, and I had yanked it. Hard. Now whatever sweater she'd been knitting for years was unraveling, and I was watching it fall apart stitch by stitch. The gate creaked again. Footsteps. Not rushing, but steady, confident. I pulled the curtain back an inch and saw a woman in a gray coat standing at my door. Not Maeve. Younger. Blonde. Sharp jawline, like her face was chiseled with intent. She didn't knock at first. Just looked straight into the peephole as if she knew I was there. Then, with a motion so casual it scared me, she tapped once, a single knock. Firm. Not loud. I opened the door 3 inches, baseball bat still behind my leg. You Elwood? She asked, scanning me head to toe like she was appraising a vehicle. Depends who's asking, I said. She reached into her coat and pulled out a plain white card. No name. No logo. Just a QR code and the word. Listen, I'm not here to hurt you, she said. But I'm not here to protect you either. I'm here to warn you. Maeve isn't the end of your problem. She's the beginning. She gestured to the card. Scan it when you're alone. Not here. Not on your Wi-Fi. Use something public. A burner if you have one. Why should I trust anything you're giving me? I asked. She half smiled. You already did. You used to work with Cascade 3 years ago, indirectly. Vendor logistics? Midwest contract route consolidation? That hit like a punch to the chest. I had forgotten. I had done consulting for a subsidiary that folded 6 months later. And suddenly I remembered a woman with glasses sitting in on one of those remote calls. She barely spoke, but she had that same face. Quiet. Watching. We profile people like you, Elwood, she said softly. Not because you're weak. Because you're consistent. Because when we test systems, we need someone who won't act erratically. And when you caught on faster than expected, someone got sloppy. What is Cascade? I asked, heart pounding. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer. A think tank turned private weapon. Financial black ops. Emotional disruption models. They don't take money, Elwood. They repurpose it. Redirect it. People like Maeve, they're assets. They're trained. You were part of a closed-cycle operation. But when someone inside turned on them, they panicked. Who? I asked. She paused. Maeve. My stomach twisted. That can't be right. She went off script. You weren't supposed to find the drive. Someone inside gave it to you because she was going to run with information worth killing for. But now that you have it, she's marked you. Marked? I repeated. My throat was dry. You have 2 options, she said, backing away. Run and never look back. Or fight and be ready to lose everything that isn't nailed to your soul. She turned without another word, disappearing into the street like she'd never been there. I stared at the card in my hand. The word listen seemed to pulse. An hour later, I drove 3 towns over to an old motel, used a throwaway laptop I kept for backups, connected to a public hotspot, and scanned the code. It opened a folder. No password. No warning. Inside, a video feed. Maeve. But not just her. She was in a dimly lit room, talking to a man whose face I couldn't see. She had a folder in her lap, the same one from the image on the flash drive. And she was trembling. I want out, she said. I can't do this anymore. I thought I could handle it. But Elwood, he wasn't like the others. He wasn't supposed to make me feel a... The man slammed his hand on the table. You made him remember, Maeve. That was your mistake. He wasn't supposed to trace the pattern. I paused the video. What pattern? And what did he mean by remember? I replayed the video 5 more times, listening closely. At minute 3:24, Maeve whispered something barely audible. They said he's already seen this before. In 2014. But he forgot. My blood ran cold. The year I had my accident. The one with the concussion. The year I lost most of my memories for 3 months. Could it be? Could I have been part of something like this twice? I backed away from the laptop. Everything around me felt like a lie wrapped in a memory. If Maeve had infiltrated my life once, maybe that was forgivable. But if this wasn't the first time? If I was dragged through this cycle more than once? then I wasn't just betrayed. I was built to be betrayed. And now someone was scared I might finally remember why. I sat on the motel bed, arms limp at my sides, the glow of the laptop flickering across my face as the last frame of Maeve's confession video lingered on screen. He wasn't supposed to remember. That line looped in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. It wasn't just haunting, it was revealing. It confirmed that what I had chalked up to a freak memory loss years ago, a so-called neurological fluke after my car accident, might have been part of something intentional. The year everything in my life shifted. Back then, I was working in Chicago, newly transferred, still recovering from the death of my mother. I'd been under stress, no close friends in the city, overworked and barely sleeping. Then came the crash, a side-impact collision with a truck on a rainy night. No broken bones, but a concussion that reportedly scrambled a few months' worth of memories. I remembered the accident, the ambulance ride, then nothing for weeks. The doctors blamed retrograde amnesia, said it would fade with time, but it never did. Maeve entered my life the following year. And now, I was being told that I had already encountered this system, this machine, and somehow made it out without realizing it. I felt like my life had been framed inside someone else's experiment. Like I wasn't just living a lie, I was engineered into one. I opened the second video in the folder. This time, it showed a man I didn't recognize, late 30s, short-cropped hair, calm demeanor. He was sitting in what looked like a high-end office, talking directly to a camera. My name is Miles Jenner. I was part of Cascade's Deep Behavioral Integration Division. If you're seeing this, it means someone inside finally broke protocol and leaked what we buried. I leaned forward. My heart was racing. We test financial systems through emotional architecture. We don't need to hack accounts. We just move the people attached to them. People like you, Elwood, are chosen because you're not unpredictable. Because you're steady. Because the system bends around your ethics until you start thinking it's your fault. That's how we learned to bypass firewalls without a single line of code. I paused it. Breathed. Hit play again. You were part of Phase 1 in 2014. Then a breach. Someone wiped the logs, triggered an early shutdown, and your profile was deemed corrupted. You weren't supposed to be reused. But Maeve, she broke that rule. Because you weren't just a test. You were hers. The screen flickered. Miles leaned closer, his voice lowering. I don't know what she told you. I don't know what she planned to steal. But if you've seen this, it means the network has already marked you as compromised. You have 48 hours, tops, before someone makes you disappear. And trust me, they won't use a truck this time. I slammed the laptop shut, sweat pouring down my neck. This was no longer a personal crisis. This was a hit list, and I was suddenly back on it. I called Dennis, my lawyer, and gave him a rehearsed message. Initiate Red Sky. That was a phrase we'd set up when we started working together years ago, back when he represented a journalist friend who'd received death threats. It meant, shut everything down, alert every emergency contact, and send the package to the media. Are you sure? Dennis asked. You want to detonate this? I don't know what's true anymore, I whispered, staring into the cheap mirror on the motel wall. But I know one thing, I'm not going down like I did last time. He went silent for a moment, then said, Okay, I've got you. I knew Dennis wasn't the kind of guy who scared easily, but even he sounded rattled, and that only made the knot in my stomach tighten. I packed up the laptop, the burner phone, the card the mystery woman gave me, and drove 2 towns north. Not back home. Not even close. I needed eyes off me. I needed space. I needed time. But time was the one thing I didn't have. Because that evening, as I checked into a second motel under a false name, I saw it. A black SUV parked outside. Same make. Same tinted windows. Same dent on the left fender as the one that had been sitting outside my house a few days ago. They weren't just watching. They were following. I texted Dennis. They're here. This wasn't just about data. What else do you know? He replied in under a minute. There's one more name you need. You won't like it. Check your email. Subject, Athena's shadow. I opened the email. There was one photo. Taken 5 years ago. I was in it, sitting on a park bench. Smiling. Laughing. Sitting next to me? A man in a gray coat. The same man from the first Cascade video. The same one Maeve had called, not who he pretended to be. The same man I had no memory of. But what made my blood freeze wasn't just the face. It was the caption Dennis wrote underneath. Your handler. The man from 2014. Real name. Elwood Grayson. My own name. Only it wasn't me. There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't make you run. It makes you freeze. Makes your body forget how to breathe, how to blink, how to exist. That's what I felt as I stared at the photo on Dennis's email, me, or someone who looked exactly like me, sitting on a bench 5 years ago, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. A man wearing the same gray coat I'd seen in the Cascade footage. His face was clean-shaven, sharp, calm. Like he knew everything before it happened. Like he'd written the script. But it wasn't just the image that shook me, it was the caption. Your handler. Real name. Elwood Grayson. That was my name. And yet, that wasn't me. I looked again. Frame by frame, zooming in on every detail. The haircut was mine. The build, identical. The shoes, even the slight hunch in the shoulders, it was me. Except for the eyes. They were off. Smiling too wide. Too knowing. Almost mocking. I felt like I was falling backward into a memory that didn't belong to me. Was I a twin? A clone? Some psychotic experiment gone wrong? No. That was crazy. Right? I called Dennis. No answer. Straight to voicemail. Then a text buzzed in from him instead. Can't speak. They're listening. Just read what I sent. You have an hour. Maybe less. I immediately scrolled down. There was a second attachment I hadn't noticed. A document titled Athena_Manifest_HG44. I opened it. A full briefing report. It started with a disclaimer. For internal use only. Subjects flagged under Level 7 infiltration. Memory stabilization protocol required after Phase 3 testing. Clearance. Red badge only. And then came the bombshell. I wasn't the test subject. I had been the field agent. The real Elwood Grayson, if I could even call him real anymore, had been part of Cascade since 2013, planted deep inside civilian lives to run simulations and observe long-term behavioral shifts in relationships under financial pressure. I was him. At least I had been. But then came a note, scribbled digitally in the margin. Subject Grayson failed compliance check after second empathy breach. Initiate neural severance protocol. Assign new identity profile. Deploy into controlled civilian role, subject EL, 2B. My legs gave out beneath me. I had been reassigned. My own mind, rewritten. My history, constructed. The accident in 2014 wasn't just a fluke. It was the moment they erased me. And in my place, they inserted this soft, fragile version of myself. A man who loved too easily. Trusted too quickly. Believed that a woman like Maeve could be real. She had been real. But not for me. Not for Elwood 2B. I was a machine walking in skin. A ghost in someone else's reflection. The pieces clicked too fast. My forgetfulness. My sudden change in temperament after 2014. How I used to be more assertive, more sharp, before that accident. Friends from before the crash had told me I didn't sound the same, didn't laugh the same. I thought it was trauma. But it wasn't. It was programming. And Maeve? She hadn't fallen in love with me. She had fallen for who I used to be before I broke protocol. Before they neutered my instincts and pushed me into a marriage they designed to monitor recovery variables. That's why she wanted out. She saw pieces of the old me resurfacing and it scared her. But she also knew I was starting to remember. I grabbed everything I could, hard drives, files, burner phones, packed them into a duffel and checked out of the motel without turning on any lights. I drove 3 hours without stopping, changing routes every 20 minutes. My hands shook the entire time. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay still. When I finally pulled into an abandoned auto garage in southern Illinois, a place Dennis once told me he kept as a fallback safe house, I found a keypad at the back entrance, just like he described years ago when we drunkenly talked about worst-case scenarios. I punched in the code. 7-4-2-1. The door clicked open. Inside, everything was dark, but intact. Maps. Emergency radio. Cans of food. Bottled water. Old military cots. The walls were lined with notes and articles, all about Cascade. Red strings. Faces connected by ink. Some names were crossed out. Others were circled in red. Then I saw it. My face. A photograph, pinned to the center wall, surrounded by notes. Underneath it, written in black Sharpie. Grayson defected. Memory wiped. Personality fracture successful. Rebuild pending. Monitor for resurgence. And next to it, a sticky note. Recent. Handwritten. If you're reading this, you've broken the loop. Now choose, rebuild or expose. I stared at those words until my eyes burned. Because I knew exactly what they meant. I could disappear. Try to reclaim a life that was never truly mine. Fade into the background. Quiet. Safe. Or I could burn the entire machine down. and finally become the man I was never supposed to remember. It's strange how quickly you can go from broken to burning. From sitting on a motel bed, gasping at your own stolen life, to standing in a forgotten safe house, surrounded by evidence of everything you were never supposed to see. That night, the one I thought would end with me vanishing, became the night I finally existed. For the first time in a decade, I knew exactly who I was. Not Elwood Grayson, the asset. Not Elwood 2B, the planted husband. Just me, a man who remembered. I spent the next 3 days in that garage, studying every file Dennis had hidden. He had been tracking Cascade for years, playing the long game, waiting for someone on the inside to trigger the failsafe. Turns out that someone wasn't Maeve. It was me. The moment I refused to disappear, the moment I dug deeper instead of running, that was the signal. I found the names of others like me. People who had their memories altered. People who woke up in lives they didn't choose, with spouses they didn't know were hired to observe, manipulate, or extract. The worst part? Some of them never woke up. They settled into their fake lives like frogs in slowly boiling water. Quiet. Obedient. Hollow. But not me. I reached out to a contact Dennis listed as Cass, a former systems engineer who had defected from Cascade 5 years earlier. She didn't trust me at first. Said she'd been burned too many times. But when I told her the name of the operation, Project Athena, and recited the access code from the sticky note in the garage, her voice went quiet. "You were the first one they said would never come back," she whispered. "They were wrong," I said. With Cass's help, we decrypted the last layer of the drive Maeve had tried to keep hidden, the one marked Cascade_origin. Inside was a map, dozens of locations across the U.S., and one folder labeled Decommissioned Sites, Schedule Q4. One of the facilities, the biggest, was scheduled to be wiped clean in 3 weeks. We made a decision. Cass activated her old relay network. Whistleblowers, journalists, civil rights lawyers, people who had been silenced, threatened, or bought. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. Suddenly, we were the storm. We released the files. Every document, every manipulation script, every name. No threats, no ransom, just the truth. And it hit like a tsunami. Major outlets picked it up within hours. A former senator gave an emergency press conference demanding a federal investigation. 3 arrests were made within a week. Cascade went dark. Websites disappeared. Bank accounts were frozen. But we knew the game wasn't over, only exposed. And Maeve? She tried calling one last time. I didn't answer. But I sent her a message. "You were right about one thing. I was more than you expected. But not because I remembered. Because I finally saw myself. And you? You taught me who I never want to be. Thank you." She never replied. Weeks passed. I moved out of Indiana. Changed my name legally, not to hide, but to reclaim. No more living under a false file. No more pieces missing. Just one whole, imperfect man walking into the rest of his life. And today, I live in a small town near the coast. I volunteer at a local youth center, helping kids with tech skills. I tell them stories about data and choices, about how your life is more than the files others try to write for you. Every morning, I wake up and look in the mirror. The face staring back? It's mine now. All mine. And no one's ever taking it again.